That's how we interact with each other in language. But when you have a text like the Quran that is always read through the Sunnah of the Prophet, you have to look at what the Sunnah of the Prophet is telling you to understand the intended meaning of the text. And in that case, the intended meaning of God's words is not necessarily the one that's closest to the evident meaning. It is the one that is best supported by the evidence of the other verses of the Quran, of the Sunnah of the Prophet, of our understanding of the overall teachings of Islam. This is what tells us the intended meaning of the Quran. And so when we read that verse that I mentioned, the verse 434, the quote-unquote wife-beating verse, when you read that, you don't read it through what comes to your mind first. You read it what comes to your mind after you understand the Sunnah of the Prophet. And the Sunnah of the Prophet on this issue is very clear. What does Aisha say in Sahih Hadith? She says, the Prophet, مَا ضَرَبَ أَحَدًا قَطْ. The Prophet never struck anybody biyadihi. Never struck anybody with his hand, except, not a man, not a woman, not a servant, except in the path of jihad. Never struck anybody. And when this verse is revealed that I read to you about adribuhunna, the context in which it's revealed, according to Hadith and Sunan Tirmidhi and other books, is that a woman comes to the Prophet and complains about her husband striking her. And the Prophet says, La tadribu ima Allah. Do not strike the female servants of God. And then Omar comes to the Prophet, depending on the version of the hadith, comes to the Prophet and says, the women in Medina are not, they're very, they're kind of overcoming their husbands. They're very forceful in their personalities. They're not like the women in Mecca. And so then then this verse is revealed and talks about how that if your wife is having nushuz, first you admonish her. She does not desist. Then you cease sleeping with her. She still continues. Then the verse says you strike her. But what does the Prophet say about that? He said, "Ulaika laysa ulaika khiyarakum." Those people who strike their wives are not the best of you. And another version of the hadith in the Mustadrak of Al-Hakim and Naysaburi, he says, "Khiyarakum lan tadribu." The best of you will not strike your wives. And in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet says, alayhi salatu wasalam, لا يجلد أحدكم امرأته